Chapter 1. ITAR. Defense Articles. The risk of sensitive technology leaking to an adversary often starts with a single misplaced drawing or an unclear classification, and that operational risk is why ITAR exists. The International Traffic in Arms Regulations treats specified hardware and technical data as inherently military, placing them on the United States munitions list and under the Directorate of Defense Trade Controls at the State Department. See Arms Export Control Act and 22 CFR Parts 120 through 130. ITAR covers physical articles, technical data, and defense services, and moves exports through registration, commodity jurisdiction requests, licensing, and treaty reporting. For a vendor, the practical first question is whether a product or datum appears on the munitions list, because that designation shifts jurisdiction to state and brings longer processing times and tighter controls. Enforcement actions against contractors show the real consequences. Criminal fines, seizure of goods, and loss of export privileges are plausible outcomes when records or technical controls fail. Draw a simple receipt. A DDTC registration form, a line item from the USML, and the commodity jurisdiction request packet are the documents you will touch most. For teams shipping mixed-use assemblies, classify early, own the technical rationale, and log every design transfer. The punchline is simple. If it looks like a weapon, treat it like one. For a short preview, in the next chapter, we'll show how commerce treats the gray space between civilian and military tech. Chapter 2, ER, Dual-Use Technology. The Export Administration regulations at Commerce govern dual-use items with both civilian and military applications, and they rest on classification rather than categorical exclusion. BIS enforces the ER through an export control classification number system that maps technical features to licensing requirements and to the Commerce country chart. See 15 CFR Parts 730 through 774 and BIS guidance. If your product is an advanced sensor, cryptographic module, or high-performance electronic, the ACCN likely determines whether you need a license to a destination, a particular end use, or an end user. The entity list and targeted designations let Commerce cut off specific firms quickly, so a partner's listing can close export channels overnight. Practical receipts you can draw include an ECCN determination memo, a technical specs appendix showing control parameters, and the BIS entity list entry that motivated any denied shipments. Classification mistakes are costly because re-engineering a product after launch is slow and expensive, and because denial decisions are enforceable with civil fines and criminal referrals. As we move to investment controls, keep this point in mind. Many technologies live in a gray space where ER, ITAR, and commercial law meet, and getting classification right early preserves market access. Expect a concrete investment review example at the start of the next chapter. Chapter 3, CFIUS, Foreign Investment Review. CFIUS is a Treasury-led interagency committee that reviews foreign acquisitions and investments for national security risk, focusing on access to control technology, sensitive data, or critical infrastructure. The committee's authority expanded under the Foreign Investment Risk Review Modernization Act and operates under Treasury regulations that define reviewable transactions and mitigation authorities. See 31 CFR Part 800 and Treasury guidance. CFIUS reviews can trigger mitigation agreements, conditions on transactions, or forced divestiture, and they can occur before any export happens because control and access are the central concerns. Practical receipts here include the CFIUS notification form, the Interagency Mitigation Agreement template, and public mitigation orders describing required divestitures. CFIUS applies a national security standard that differs from licensing thresholds, so a deal that would not require an export license can still be blocked or conditioned. Licensing thresholds change with destination and end use, Jurisdiction tests hinge on the item's classification and the parties involved, and enforcement penalties now include heavy civil fines, criminal prosecutions, and commercial blacklists. As of 2025, ER 600 series amendments and expanded entity list authorities have sharpened those enforcement levers. For vendors, therefore, regulatory analysis must be continuous, tied to customers, partners, and financiers, and documented from product design through capital events. Chapter 4: Sanctions and Licensing. OFAC ties. Contrary to a common assumption, sanctions and export controls are not interchangeable tools, and one does not automatically substitute for the other. OFAC targets transactions by reference to persons, jurisdictions, and prohibited activities using a sanctions logic that differs from the item-based logic of ITAR and the technical classification logic of ER. See 31 CFR, Chapter V, and OFAC guidance. A BIS license to ship a dual-use sensor to a country means nothing if OFAC has an embargo or the end user appears on the specially designated nationals list, because payments can be blocked and goods detained. Practical receipts for this lane include an OFAC SDN check printout, a license application or denial, and a transaction trail showing payment routing and screening outcomes. Enforcement shows that routing through intermediaries or failing due diligence invites fines and reputational damage, so sanction screening must be baked into export workflows. The punchline is clear. Export licenses and sanctions checks must speak to each other in real time, and if you miss that connection, you can lose more than a shipment. In the final chapter, we move from rules to the operational program you actually need. Chapter 5. Compliance lives in processes, not hope, and enforcement cases regularly trace back to weak records, fuzzy technical classifications, or shallow end-user checks. Start by classifying. Determine whether an item is on the USML and, if not, assign an ECCN supported by technical specifications and the written rationale that an external reviewer would accept, and retain the supporting technical receipts. Parallel to that, map corporate ownership and funding, because CFIUS scrutiny can arrive pre-transaction, and maintain denied party screening to catch OFAC or BIS listings before money changes hands. Maintain an auditable licensing trail, including DDTC commodity jurisdiction requests and BIS advisory requests. Retain and use statements and log diversion mitigation controls. When suppliers or customers change, reassess controls and avoid assuming prior approvals still apply. Embed compliance ownership in the product lifecycle, name a responsible person, and involve counsel early to shorten licensing timelines. The closing synthesis is practical. Treat export control as lifecycle management. Classify early, document everything, screen every counterparty, and build licensing lead times into your go-to-market plan. As an immediate test you can run, pick one product and one prospective customer country, then perform these actions and time them. Confirm USML status, assign an ECCN with technical support, run an OFAC SDN check, map corporate ownership for CFI US exposure, and estimate license wait times. The gap between your estimate and reality will show where to fix controls first.